If you believe one moment can change a lifetime, this story is for you. He opened the wrong door for just 1 second, and what he saw shattered his pride, rewrote his past, and reshaped his future forever. Stay with us until the end, because the final twist will stay in your heart long after the screen fades to black. And if you believe stories can still heal, surprise, and inspire in a world that's forgotten how, hit subscribe now. You're not just joining a channel. You're joining a family. He never meant to open that door, not really, because the house had been mapped in his mind for years the way a general memorizes a battlefield, every corridor familiar, every sound predictable, every human presence neatly categorized by function rather than feeling, and yet on that gray morning, thick with the kind of silence money buys but never fills, he turned left instead of right, distracted by a phone call about losses, lawsuits, and a reputation that once commanded rooms now barely held them together, and the door swung inward on its soft hinges, revealing not the storage closet he expected but a private world he had never imagined existed beneath his roof, where the maid, the quiet woman he barely noticed except as a background necessity, knelt beside the window with sunlight pouring over her like a blessing, her uniform folded neatly aside, her hands trembling not with fear but devotion as she whispered words he could not hear yet somehow felt, surrounded by notebooks filled edge to edge with writing, children's drawings pinned carefully to the wall, and a small radio murmuring news from another country, another life, and in that frozen instant he saw not a servant but a human being holding together an entire universe with sheer will, and something inside him, a thing long calcified by grief and ambition, cracked without sound, because he recognized the look on her face, the same look he once wore before the world taught him how fragile hope could be, and he stepped back silently, closing the door as if sealing a secret too heavy to carry, unaware that this accidental trespass would unravel everything he believed about power, dignity, and the invisible people who hold broken empires upright, and for the rest of the day he moved through meetings like a ghost, haunted by the realization that while he had been mourning the loss of his status, she had been fighting to preserve something far more precious. Purpose, inside a house that had forgotten what it meant. Sleep abandoned him that night, because memory is cruel when invited, and it returned him to a younger self, before the suits, before the walls, before the woman he loved left with the last of his gentleness, when he believed effort guaranteed reward and kindness was a currency that never devalued, and the next morning he began to notice what wealth had trained him to ignore, the way the maid rose before dawn and retired after midnight, how she saved scraps of bread with reverence, how she listened when others spoke even when no one listened to her, and curiosity, sharp and unfamiliar, pushed him toward a conversation he had avoided for years, and when he finally spoke to her, not as an employer but as a man uncertain of his own ground, she hesitated, then told him her story in fragments at first, of a life left behind, of children she supported from afar, of a talent buried because survival demanded silence, and when she revealed that the notebooks he'd seen were not prayers but stories, stories she wrote for children who had never seen themselves as heroes, he felt shame coil in his chest, because he owned publishing companies that crushed voices like hers every day while congratulating themselves on diversity, and in the weeks that followed, something shifted, not dramatically, not cleanly, but steadily, as he began to listen more than speak, to ask instead of command, to read her stories late at night and rediscover empathy through words meant for small hands and brave hearts, and when a crisis hit, an exposé threatening to destroy his remaining credibility, it was her calm, her clarity, her refusal to see the world only as winners and losers that guided him toward a choice he never would have made before, telling the truth, even when it cost him everything, and when the fallout came, brutal and swift, it was she who reminded him that loss could be an opening rather than an end, because some doors close so others can finally be opened from the inside. The transformation was not instant, and redemption never arrives neatly wrapped, but as months passed and the noise of his former life faded, he invested not in markets but in people, beginning with the woman whose life he had almost walked past forever, helping her publish under her own name, refusing ownership, refusing credit, watching as her stories crossed oceans and reached the children she once wrote for in secret, and when she finally stood before an audience, not as a maid, not as a symbol, but as herself, he realized that the door he opened by mistake had not led him into her private world, but out of his own prison, and as applause filled the room, he understood the final truth that changed his heart forever. Dignity is not given by status, compassion is not taught by success, and sometimes the greatest miracles happen not when we are looking for them, but when we are humbled enough to see what was always there, waiting, just beyond the wrong door.